Most people think life starts moving once they figure it all out. But what if the opposite were true? What if clarity isn't something you wait for, but something that waits for you to decide who you are? Neville Goddard didn't teach people to chase steps or signs. He taught them to choose identity first, to live in the end even before the road appears. Because the moment you assume who you will be, reality begins rearranging itself to match that assumption. This is the law of assumption explained not as theory, but as living truth. Imagination creates reality. And when you begin to feel it real, when you inhabit the wish fulfilled Neville spoke of, the invisible becomes visible, the uncertain becomes certain, and life stops feeling random. You'll see that you were never waiting for the path. The path was waiting for you, waiting for the moment you'd finally say, "This is who I am now." From that moment, the way opens effortlessly, step by step, guided by the quiet brilliance of who you've become. Most people spend their whole lives trying to figure out how things will unfold, how the money will come, how the opportunity will appear, how the door will open. But Neville Goddard would smile at that question, because to him, the how is never yours to solve. The real secret lies in deciding who you are before any evidence appears. When identity is chosen, the invisible machinery of life begins to move. It's like tuning a radio. You don't beg for the station to play your favorite song. You adjust the dial until the signal is clear. In the same way, the law of assumption explains that your frequency is your identity. Once you live in the end, the right melodies, the right events, find you. The how becomes irrelevant because you've already become the one who naturally experiences the result. Think of someone learning to swim. They can study techniques, read about strokes, watch others glide through the water, but the transformation only happens when they become a swimmer, when their body learns the feeling of floating. Manifestation is the same. You don't manifest by thinking about it, you do it by being it. The reason many struggle to manifest effortlessly is because they're still negotiating with their old selves. They peek into the mirror of imagination, but keep one foot in doubt. Neville Goddard would say, "Step fully into the wish fulfilled." The universe reorganizes itself around the certainty of who you assume yourself to be. Have you ever noticed that when you finally decide, truly decide, something shifts immediately? That's because assumption precedes evidence. When you assume your identity, imagination creates reality around that assumption. The feeling it real Neville described isn't wishful thinking. It's alignment with the only version of you that already exists. You can think of it like walking through fog. At first, you can't see the road ahead, but each step reveals a little more. The law of assumption works the same way. Clarity comes only after you walk as the one who knows. Living in the end is not about seeing the whole path. It's about trusting that the next stone appears as your foot moves forward. Someone once asked Neville how to start manifesting effortlessly. He replied, "Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled." Notice he didn't say, "Figure out the plan." The plan unfolds through the state you occupy. Your imagination isn't guessing the future. It's creating it moment by moment. When you decide who you are in the end, everything irrelevant begins to fall away. Old conversations lose their grip, unnecessary worries fade. You stop chasing and start radiating. That's what living in the end Neville method truly means. Embodying the version of you who has already arrived. It's almost funny how life conspires once you shift identity. People appear at the right time, messages come, opportunities align, not because you forced them, but because you became the magnet for them. The mystery of manifestation dissolves when you understand that who you become is the cause of everything that follows. So don't ask, "How will it happen?" anymore. Ask, "Who am I now?" The rest is the unfolding of that answer. And as you hold this new state, something begins to reorganize within you, preparing you for the deeper truth Neville taught. Assumption always comes before manifestation. Neville Goddard often said, "Assumption, if persisted in, becomes fact." It's one of those phrases that sounds simple until you actually try it. Because assumption isn't pretending, it's possession. It's claiming something inwardly so completely that life has no choice but to echo it back. When you assume the state of the fulfilled self, you stop wishing and start existing. Imagine someone who decides to become healthy. They don't wait for motivation or a perfect plan. They assume the identity of a healthy person today. Their choices begin to align automatically. Different food, different habits, different posture. The outside follows the inside. The law of assumption explained this perfectly. What you accept as true within becomes visible without. Neville's entire method of feeling it real rests on one truth. Life is a mirror. The world doesn't show you what you want. It shows you what you assume yourself to be. If you hold the assumption that you are lucky, you'll start noticing doors opening. If you assume you're overlooked, life will hand you more of that reflection. It's all consciousness expressing itself. The fulfilled self isn't someone you chase. It's a role you step into. Like an actor slipping into costume, once you wear the feeling of the wish fulfilled, your behavior naturally changes. People sense something new in your energy, and that invisible shift, not effort, becomes the catalyst for change. It's the art of living in the end, Neville style. Many misunderstand this principle and try to force results, but Neville never taught striving. He taught surrender, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing the end is already done. When you assume your desired state, you move through the world differently, with an ease that makes manifestation look effortless. Think about it. When you know a movie's ending, you don't worry during the tense scenes. You can relax and enjoy the unfolding. The same happens with your manifestations. Once you feel the ending as real, you stop reacting from fear. You start responding from certainty. That's the emotional signature of creation. Neville called this living from the end. It means walking as though the wish fulfilled is already your natural condition. Not someday, now. Every action taken from this state is inspired, not forced. You might make a call, send an email, or take a walk, but the difference is that your movement comes from being, not seeking. When you claim the fulfilled self, even your perception of time changes. You stop measuring how long it's taking and start recognizing signs of alignment, coincidences, ideas, and effortless guidance. You begin to see how imagination creates reality, one subtle reflection at a time. The outside starts to feel like a delayed photograph of your inner film. There's an undeniable peace that comes when you trust this law. The chaos quiets. You stop needing proof because the feeling itself becomes proof enough. Neville taught that the wish fulfilled is not something to get, it's something to remember. It already exists in consciousness, waiting for your recognition. And once you start recognizing it, once you start walking as that version of you, the entire world begins to reorganize around that choice. But here's where most people stumble. They wait for clarity before they assume. Yet the truth Neville revealed next is far more radical. Clarity is born after assumption, not before. Most people sit in hesitation, thinking they need perfect clarity before taking a single step. They analyze, question, research, and call it wisdom. But Neville Goddard flipped that idea upside down. He said clarity doesn't come before assumption. It's born from it. You don't wait for the fog to lift. You walk into it trusting that your identity will light the way. Imagine standing before a staircase shrouded in mist. You can't see the top, but each step appears as your foot rises. That's the essence of living in the end. The law of assumption explained that the path isn't revealed to the curious observer, it's revealed to the one who commits. Certainty comes after identity, never before. Neville used to tell his students, stop trying to find out what to do and start knowing who you are. Because once you assume your new state, action becomes effortless. You begin to feel what's right rather than overthink it. The intellect tries to figure out the way. Imagination creates it. Think about how a sculptor works. He doesn't wait for the final image to appear before carving. He chips away, trusting that what's meant to emerge is already inside the stone. The same is true for you. When you assume the wish fulfilled Neville described, you reveal clarity through movement, not through waiting. Many people paralyze themselves with the illusion of preparation. They say, I'll start when I understand it better, or I'll move when I'm sure. But Neville Goddard would gently remind them, that's the voice of doubt, dressed as logic. True creation happens when you move from faith, not from proof. You might remember moments in your own life when you acted on a deep inner knowing, without a clear reason, and later realized it was the perfect choice. That's the law of assumption in motion. You were being guided by your new state, not your old logic. When you live in the end, Neville method teaches, the unknown becomes an ally, not a threat. Clarity then is like sunlight through a window. It appears once you open the curtains of fear. You don't have to make the light, you just have to let it in. The moment you assume your new identity, the right ideas, people, and impulses begin to appear naturally. It's as if life says, finally, you've remembered who you are. Those who wait for certainty rarely move, but those who become certain first, even in silence, find themselves carried by invisible hands. You start receiving intuitive nudges, Call this person. Take this route. Rest today. And every small act unfolds into a greater pattern you couldn't have planned. That's what Neville called inspired movement. So if you feel lost, don't analyze harder. Assume deeper. The moment you feel it real, clarity begins to organize around you. It's not mental clarity, it's emotional certainty. The kind that whispers, "You're exactly where you need to be." That's how you manifest effortlessly, through identity, not intellect. And as you begin to trust that flow, something remarkable happens. Confusion transforms into curiosity. You stop fearing the unknown and start playing with it. Because now you realize, every version of you already exists, and the one who knows exactly what to do is waiting for you to step into their consciousness. Neville Goddard taught that creation is finished. Nothing new is being made. Every possibility already exists in the vast field of imagination. You're not trying to create your desire. You're simply shifting awareness to the version of you who already lives it. Like tuning into a new radio station, the frequency was always there. You just hadn't tuned in yet. Think of it like a movie library. Every film has already been shot, edited, and stored. You're the viewer with the remote. If you want a different story, you don't beg the director to reshoot it. You change the channel. The law of assumption explained that your consciousness is the remote control of reality. Choose a new state, and the scene before you changes. The version of you who already manifests effortlessly, Neville described, isn't a fantasy. It's real in another dimension of awareness. They think differently, speak differently, even breathe differently. When you assume their identity, you begin to feel what they feel. And as feeling becomes real, reality adjusts accordingly. Many struggle because they think the future is something to chase. But the future isn't ahead, it's within. You meet it through imagination. Neville used to say, "You are already that which you want to be." When you understand that, manifestation stops being a pursuit and becomes a remembering. Let's say you desire abundance. Somewhere in the infinite field of consciousness, there exists a version of you who is already abundant, calm, generous, grateful. That self is not waiting for money to appear. They already feel prosperous. Your job isn't to force wealth to come, it's to wear the inner atmosphere of someone who has it. And once you wear it, the outer world can't resist adjusting. People, ideas, and opportunities will seem to appear out of nowhere, but they were never random. They were always connected to the frequency of that version of you. You simply tuned in through assumption. The true Neville Goddard method of living in the end. It's a humbling realization. You've never been lacking. You've only been loyal to the wrong version of yourself. Every time you affirm lack, you reinforce that identity. But when you assume your wish fulfilled, you align with the consciousness of completion. You start living from the end, not toward it. Think about an actor again. When they take on a role, they don't wait for permission to feel like the character. They become them internally. And the more fully they embody it, the more convincing their performance. Life works the same way. The universe mirrors your performance with unwavering accuracy. The question isn't how do I get there, but which self am I loyal to right now? Because the moment you shift loyalty, everything changes. Neville's law of assumption isn't about effort, it's about selection. You select, through feeling, which version of you to experience. And once that selection is made, once you begin to feel, breathe, and walk as that version, the transformation begins to unfold quietly, almost imperceptibly. But soon, you'll notice, people treat you differently. Ideas come effortlessly. The world bends slightly in your favor. That's the magic of identity. And the next step is learning how to practice it, not in thought, but in feeling. This is where Neville Goddard's teachings become alive. He never asked people to daydream about outcomes. He asked them to enter the state. Close your eyes. Forget for a moment what's missing. Instead, ask, how does it feel to be the one who already has it? Not what you seemed, but what you feel. That's the beginning of real manifestation. Visualization alone is like watching a movie about someone else's life. Embodiment turns that movie into your own experience. When you live in the end, Neville method teaches, you aren't a spectator, you're the main character. You don't imagine yourself watching abundance. You feel the calm confidence of being abundant. Neville called this feeling it real. The difference is subtle but powerful. You're not forcing emotion, you're discovering what it naturally feels like to be that version. Maybe it feels peaceful, maybe grateful, maybe quietly certain. Whatever it is, rest in that feeling as if it's already your truth. Think of it like slipping into warm water. At first, the mind resists. It analyzes, compares, doubts, but stay with the feeling long enough and resistance dissolves. The body relaxes. The new state becomes natural. That's when imagination creates reality, not through intensity but through familiarity. Here's a simple practice. Before sleep, close your eyes and replay a scene that implies your wish fulfilled Neville described. But don't focus on the scene itself. Focus on how it feels to live in that scene. Feel the weight of peace in your chest, the ease in your breath. Let your imagination whisper, "It's already done." The subconscious mind doesn't respond to words, it responds to states. That's why this technique is so powerful. When you embody the feeling, you send a clear message to creation. This is who I am now. And life, ever obedient to identity, begins to reorganize itself to reflect it. If the mind tries to argue, "But I don't see it yet," smile and remember, that's not your job. Your only task is to dwell in the state. You don't dig up seeds to check if they're growing. You nurture them with faith. In the same way, you nurture your new identity with persistence, not impatience. Some like to use anchors, a certain song, a scent, or a place, to help trigger the feeling. That's fine, as long as the anchor leads to being, not to wishing. Because wishing keeps the desire distant. Being pulls it here. The law of assumption explained that consciousness doesn't wait. It is. And as you repeat this practice, something shifts quietly within. Old emotions lose their weight. New thoughts appear naturally. You no longer need to convince yourself. You simply remember who you are. You begin to manifest effortlessly because the effort was always in pretending to be someone else. So tonight, before you drift to sleep, don't try to visualize perfection. Instead, become the one who already lives it. Let that identity wrap around you like a familiar blanket. Feel the peace of the fulfilled self breathing through you. And watch as, from this inner stillness, a new world begins to unfold. And that feeling, that compass, is exactly what Neville spoke of next. Neville Goddard used to say, "Feeling is the secret." Not thinking, not wishing, not hoping, feeling. Because feeling is what communicates with the creative power within you. The intellect can describe where you want to go, but the emotion is the compass that takes you there. When you feel the wish fulfilled, you're no longer seeking the path, you are on it. You can tell when you've entered the right state because peace replaces striving. It's not an excited rush or forced optimism, it's quiet certainty. You don't need to see results to know it's working, you simply know. Gratitude rises naturally, as if your soul recognizes something true. That's the vibration of living in the end, Neville taught. The mistake many make is trying to measure progress with their eyes instead of their heart. They ask, why hasn't it shown up yet? But the question itself reveals they're still outside the state. When you're in the right feeling, time disappears. You stop waiting, you start being, and that's when imagination creates reality most powerfully. Think about moments when you felt deep gratitude, not because of something new, but because you suddenly noticed what was already there. That's the essence of assumption. Gratitude is not a reaction, it's a recognition. When you feel thankful before the evidence, you signal to life that you already own it. Neville described this feeling as the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It's not forced joy, it's relaxed knowing. Like a pilot trusting the instruments in a storm, the external may seem uncertain, but the inner reading is precise. The law of assumption explained that your emotional tone is the truest indicator of your destination. So how do you know if you're aligned? Listen to your emotions. Anxiety means resistance. Peace means alignment. If you're uneasy, it's not a sign to give up. It's a sign to adjust your inner state. Instead of asking for more, return to gratitude for what's already done in consciousness. The shift is immediate. Many people think they need intensity, fireworks, passion, overwhelming joy. But the most powerful manifestations often come from calmness, because calmness is faith. It says, I don't need to see it. I already am it. That's the emotional signature of someone living in the end. You might practice this throughout the day. Pause for 10 seconds and ask, what am I feeling right now? If the answer is tension, breathe and recall the feeling of the fulfilled self. Let gratitude wash through you like sunlight. In that moment, you're correcting your inner compass, pointing it back toward your assumed identity. This is how you manifest effortlessly, Neville described, not by forcing the world, but by maintaining the inner temperature of faith. You become so attuned to your feeling that the outer must comply, because reality is always the echo of your emotional state. change the vibration and the picture shifts. And as you learn to navigate by emotion instead of circumstance, life becomes a gentler journey. You stop trying to control the storm and start sailing by the wind. And if confusion ever returns, if the waters grow unclear again, Neville had a simple reminder: don't look for more steps. Return to being. Neville Goddard knew the human mind loves to complicate what is simple. The moment confusion appears, we start making lists, creating strategies, or asking for signs. But confusion isn't a signal to plan, it's a signal to pause. The law of assumption explained that clarity comes from state, not from strategy. When you return to being, the next step quietly presents itself. You've probably noticed this in everyday life. When you're tense, even small choices feel heavy. But when you're peaceful, everything flows. That's not coincidence. It's consciousness organizing itself. The right action always emerges from the right identity. You don't force inspiration, you align with it. Imagine trying to steer a boat in turbulent waters. Every turn feels wrong because the waves keep shifting. But once you stop fighting the current and center the sail, the boat begins to glide. That's the essence of living in the end, Neville method teaches. You stop paddling in panic and start trusting the wind of your assumption. Neville often said, "Be still and know that you are." This isn't passivity, it's creative rest. When you withdraw attention from problems and return to your inner certainty, inspiration becomes inevitable. Suddenly, what felt like confusion turns into intuition. The step you couldn't see appears naturally. Think of those moments when you've just known what to do. You didn't reason your way there. It came as a quiet nudge. That's what Neville called inspired movement. It's not planned, it's revealed. You don't need to analyze every option because the right one feels peaceful, light, and aligned. Planning has its place, of course, but planning from fear creates friction. When you assume the wish fulfilled, your plans evolve from a higher place. You start moving, not because you have to, but because you want to. And that difference changes everything. It's the shift from effort to flow. When confusion knocks, it's usually the old self panicking. The new self doesn't panic, it observes. It remembers that imagination creates reality, not overthinking. The mind says, "What if this goes wrong?" The assumed identity smiles and says, "I already know how this ends." That calmness is power. Sometimes returning to being means doing something ordinary, taking a walk, listening to music, breathing deeply. These moments bring you back to the present, where your assumed self already exists. From that state, the next impulse comes effortlessly. A call to make, an idea to follow, or maybe just the clarity to rest. It's almost paradoxical. When you stop chasing direction, direction finds you. Because the moment you stop searching for steps, you become available for guidance. Neville's method of living from the end is not about making perfect plans. It's about becoming the person for whom everything naturally unfolds. So, when confusion arises again, and it will, remember, don't reach for another plan. Reach for presence. Return to the state where peace lives, and the next move will reveal itself through inspired movement, not mental effort. And as you do, you'll start recognizing the first beautiful signs of alignment emerging all around you. Neville Goddard said that once you've assumed your desired state, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to reflect that assumption. These rearrangements are what many call signs, but they aren't cosmic tests or random coincidences. They're gentle confirmations that your consciousness is shifting. Life starts whispering, "You're on the right track." The first signs are usually internal, not external. You begin to feel lighter, calmer, and strangely certain, even without visible change. That's alignment. The wish fulfilled Neville described isn't about waiting for results. It's about recognizing the feeling of inevitability. You just know something has changed, even if you can't explain why. Then the outer confirmations start appearing. Maybe someone reaches out with an opportunity, or a problem dissolves on its own. Perhaps you overhear a conversation that mirrors your new state. These are reflections of your inner assumption. Imagination creates reality, and reality begins responding in kind. You might notice effortless decisions. Choices that used to feel heavy suddenly become obvious. You don't overthink, you just move. That's what it feels like to manifest effortlessly, Neville taught. The state of being naturally guides you toward actions that match it, just as a compass guides a traveler without needing explanation. Sometimes alignment looks like endings too. Old relationships fading, jobs closing, habits breaking apart. It can feel uncomfortable, but remember, the old state is making room for the new one. You're not losing anything. You're shedding what no longer fits the identity you've chosen to wear. There's also the phenomenon of synchronicity, those strange, perfect coincidences that seem too aligned to be chance. You think of someone and they text you. You imagine a symbol and it appears on a billboard. That's the law of assumption explained through experience. The outer world is echoing your inner movie frame by frame. One of the most beautiful signs of alignment is emotional stability. Things that once triggered anxiety now meet calm acceptance. You stop reacting and start observing. This is the fruit of living in the end. Neville method reveals the power to remain steady because you know the end is already secure. As alignment deepens, your creativity blooms. Ideas flow, intuition sharpens, and timing improves. You find yourself accidentally being in the right place at the right time. It's not luck, it's resonance. You're simply vibrating at the same frequency as the life you've chosen to inhabit. Another subtle sign: peace during waiting. You no longer feel the desperate need to control outcomes. Waiting becomes resting. You trust that everything is unfolding with divine precision. This peace is not resignation, it's recognition. The awareness that your assumption is already fact in imagination. And when all these signs begin to surround you, you'll notice something profound. You've stopped looking for signs altogether, because now you are the sign. The outer world mirrors the inner certainty you've cultivated. From this depth of embodiment, life no longer feels like pursuit, but participation, a natural dance between who you've become and what reality must now reflect. At this stage, you're no longer practicing the law of assumption, you're being it. Deep embodiment means your desired state isn't something you visit, it's where you live. Neville Goddard would say that you've crossed the line from believing to knowing. You wake up already feeling the truth of the wish fulfilled, and that quiet confidence becomes your new baseline. Living from the end. Neville method teaches isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about remembering that perfection already exists within your consciousness. You respond to challenges from peace, not panic. You might still act, plan, and decide, but all of it flows from a grounded awareness that the outcome is already secure. This is where the concept of effortless manifestation becomes real. You're not forcing movement anymore. Movement arises naturally. The right ideas show up at the right time. You feel drawn to take actions that align with your new identity. That's the difference between chasing and allowing. The former exhausts, the latter creates. Neville often said that the outer world is a delayed reflection of the inner. So once you've fully assumed your new identity, you stop judging by appearances. Even if circumstances haven't caught up yet, you know they will. The delay no longer bothers you because your state is already fulfilled. You're simply waiting for the photograph to develop. People around you might sense something different but can't name it. They might say you seem calmer, more sure of yourself, or somehow lucky. But what they're really sensing is coherence. The alignment between your inner and outer worlds. That harmony is magnetic. It draws the matching experiences without effort. You'll also notice your decision-making changing. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" you ask, "What would my fulfilled self naturally do here?" The answer always comes quietly, instantly. That's how the next step reveals itself, not through mental analysis, but through identity resonance. You move from instinct, not insecurity. Even setbacks begin to feel different. Instead of discouragement, you feel curiosity. You realize that every apparent detour is still part of the same unfolding. When you live in the end, you can't lose. You can only evolve. That realization brings profound emotional freedom. This embodiment also affects your relationships. You stop needing others to validate you because you already feel complete. Ironically, that's when deeper connections form, not from need but from overflow. The wish fulfilled Neville described becomes not just about what you get, but who you become in the process. Over time, you start noticing that your old habits of doubt and worry simply fade. They don't disappear because you fought them. They dissolve because they no longer match your new frequency. You've shifted from managing life to creating it. That's the true essence of imagination creates reality. And as you continue living from this embodied state, you begin to understand Neville's greatest truth. Assumption doesn't just shape your future, it is your future. You realize the journey was never about making it happen, it was about becoming the one for whom it's already done. From here, there's only one thing left: to trust the mystery as it unfolds. Neville Goddard's wisdom always led back to one truth. Everything begins with assumption. Not wishful thinking, not waiting for a sign, but choosing who you are now. When you assume who you will be, the invisible world rearranges itself around that choice. The mystery doesn't need solving, it needs trusting. Life reveals its brilliance only to those who've already said yes to who they are becoming. It's like standing before a locked door. Most people wait for the key, not realizing that becoming the version of themselves who belongs inside is what unlocks it. You don't get the key and then enter. You enter in consciousness, and the key appears. That's the law of assumption explained in its simplest form. The way appears only after the self is chosen. There's beauty in this paradox. When you finally stop chasing, you start receiving. When you stop asking when, you start being. The world ceases to feel random. It feels choreographed. Neville's teaching wasn't about controlling circumstances. It was about remembering that you are already the source of every circumstance you'll ever meet. So you walk forward, not with certainty of details, but with certainty of identity. You live in the end, Neville method teaches, and as you do, each step rises to meet your feet. It's a dance with the unseen. You move, and life responds. You rest, and life breathes through you. This is manifestation without strain, the art of harmony between human and divine imagination. The mystery is never the enemy. It's the space where creation breathes. Those who fear it stay stuck in planning. Those who embrace it find themselves led by grace. To assume who you will be is to surrender to that grace, to say, I am already home, even while I walk the road. Every great transformation begins this way, with a quiet inner decision that nobody else can see. No trumpet sounds, no lightning flashes, just a shift in self-recognition, a moment when you stop trying to get and start choosing to be. From that moment, the universe becomes your mirror, faithfully reflecting your new state. Neville called this the moment of awakening. It's the instant when you realize you've always been the dreamer and the dream. Once you assume the identity of your fulfilled self, the line between imagination and reality dissolves. Everything external becomes a gentle echo of your internal conviction. This is where faith turns into vision, not the blind kind that hopes, but the seeing kind that knows. You stop demanding proof because the feeling itself is proof enough. You no longer need to figure out how. You're too busy living as the one for whom it's already done. The mystery unfolds in your favor, naturally and silently. Soon, what once felt impossible becomes ordinary. The desires that used to keep you up at night now feel like old memories, because in truth they are. Memories of your future self, finally lived through you. This is what Neville meant when he said that imagination creates reality. Your assumption was always the seed, your life the flowering of it. So, assume who you will be. Wear that consciousness like your favorite garment. Walk as if the end has already arrived, and it will. You'll discover that the universe was never testing you. It was waiting for you to remember your role as its author. And when you do, the once hidden path shines clearly beneath your feet, illuminated by your own becoming. So now the question is no longer, how do I make it happen, but who am I choosing to be? Because every outcome you seek is simply a mirror of your current assumption. When you live in the end, when you feel it real as Neville Goddard taught, life bends to match the identity you've claimed. Close your eyes tonight and ask yourself, if I already had what I desire, how would I feel? Then dwell there, even for a few seconds. Let that feeling guide your actions, your thoughts, your tone of voice. That is how the invisible becomes visible. Remember, imagination creates reality. You are not waiting for the path to appear. The path is waiting for you to become the one who walks it. And once you assume that identity, the way reveals itself in harmony, peace, and perfect timing. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. Each week we go deeper into the teachings of Neville Goddard and the living art of assumption, helping you remember that you are the creator of your world.